Fixing the Never-Ending Divorce by Sam Margulies. Chapter 1, Introduction. This is an audiobook about people whose divorces seem to last forever and continue to ruin their lives long after the court has dissolved their marriage. Although most lawyers and lay people explain this phenomenon as an inevitable part of the emotional process of divorce, I strongly disagree. So, in the next hour, I will show you how the divorce that lasts forever, what I have come to call the failed divorce, is more a product of the lawyer's outlook than it is a result of the couple's anger. People divorce for many reasons, but a primary one is to get a fresh start and perhaps find a more compatible mate. Even more immediate for many is a deep yearning for a peaceful life, not perpetually soured by anger at and from a spouse. So when divorce leads to these things, peace and a fresh start, we can regard it as successful and maybe even worth all the anxiety and dislocation that comes in its wake. Most people, 5 years after divorce, report that they are happier than they were before the divorce. But too many divorces don't turn out that way. For too many, the divorce is followed by continued conflict with the former spouse. Almost 99% of all divorces are settled by a negotiated settlement. Even divorces that have been vigorously litigated settle most of the time, often on the day the trial is supposed to begin. But even though these cases settle, almost half of these couples are back in court within 2 years, fighting over kids and money. For some couples, one such visit is enough. Post-judgment motion practice, as it is generally called, is expensive. It would not be surprising for a motion to enforce or modify a visitation to generate $5,000 to $10,000 in fees. Couples realize that many more trips to court will break them financially and figure out how to duck or at least endure each other. For another unfortunate group of couples, such litigation becomes a common occurrence, and it is not unusual to see them back in court once or more every year. For the most extreme group of such litigants, legal conflicts bind them together as tightly as marriage ever did, as each former partner lives with a constant eye on the other as they obsess over the next fight to come. I recall one miserable woman who wanted to hire me 30 years ago when I was still practicing law. I would have been her 15th lawyer, as she had been in the courts continuously for 19 years. Luckily, I was sufficiently experienced by then to know not to take the case. In this discussion, I consider several questions. First, what do these people fight about? Second, what is the root or roots of this failed divorce that prevents one or both former partners from emotionally letting go of the other? And third, is there any way to help these people come to an emotional settlement so they can live in peace? First, let's look at what the fighting is about. As a matter of law, once property has been divided between the spouses and the divorce is final, it is almost impossible to get the court to reconsider property distribution. If you can prove that your ex had hidden or undisclosed assets, courts will often reopen the subject. But absent fraud, people don't have much opportunity to fight much about property. The most common dispute usually involves the sale of the marital home when the agreement calls for it to be sold. Typically, the person living in the house stalls because he or she doesn't want to sell and can't find an acceptable price for which she can buy out the ex. So she, it's usually the wife who stayed in the house, stalls and drags her feet about listing the house. Or she demands an unrealistic price to discourage would-be buyers or make sure the house is a slovenly mess when people come to look. There are many ways to sabotage a house sale.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?